Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the JD Rucker Show. If you are watching the evening show, which starts at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, then awesome. If you're watching the daytime show, which starts at various times depending on what's happening in the news, then that's awesome as well. But either way, you should find me wherever you want to find me, whatever platforms you use, Rumble, X, YouTube, BitChute, all the various networks, all the various areas where the show's broadcast. You can find all those, plus my websites, plus my socials, and even my sponsors. You can go to jdrucker.com/find, jdrucker.com/find. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. You're listening to the JD Rucker Show. Let's begin. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the JD Rucker Show. I know I always say that I'm supposed to do some chit-chat in the beginning to give people time to get in, but I'm not going to do that. It just doesn't feel right, so let's just get straight into the stories. We only have 4 today, but I would imagine that at least 2 of them are going to be long. One of them is going to be short, and I'm going to start off with that one. It's JD Vance calling. He has a few words about Kamala Harris. We'll also be talking about how both Muslims and Satanists are rising here in the United States of America, and what that means for us. If you are a Bible-believing Christian, what does it mean to see Islam, to see Satanism, both becoming far more mainstream than I think anybody realized was happening? I shouldn't say anybody. I'm sure a lot of you did realize what's happening, but I think a good chunk of American Christians have no idea. The article by Michael Snyder really sparked my interest. 10 signs that the American people are becoming insane. Only 10? My gosh, try harder. And then, of course, I have to do some horn tooting because I did had a few people go, I wouldn't say go after me, but basically tell me that I was wrong about, the call for, the other day I called for the president or somebody to ask John Roberts to step in, intervene, that he was the best chance we would have as far as being able to stop these tyrants, these judicial activists, men and women on the bench that are trying to subvert the Trump agenda. John Roberts, unfortunately, as Chief Justice, he is the most likely person to be able to do anything about it, which doesn't give us much hope because, let's face it, he's probably not. But just in case, President Trump did reach out to him today. Another little horn tooting, because I took a whole lot of flack yesterday when I said that the chances are, President Trump, I was saying at the time, the rumors about the end of the Department of Education was that it was going to be basically a sweeping decree that it's all done. Okay, that they're just going to scrap the entire thing. And I said, that's not going to fly. They won't allow that. They being not just the judiciary, but all the way up to the Supreme Court itself. That even the Supreme Court, the quote-unquote conservative Supreme Court, will probably vote 9-zip if the president were to go down that road and use an executive order to try to undo a department that was created by Congress. That's constitutionally impossible. And I had so many people saying, no, it wasn't created by Congress. It was done by Jimmy Carter's decree. And I'm like, no, actually, it was a law. It started off as a bill and became a law signed by Jimmy Carter. What his decree was to elevate it to a cabinet level position. That was the executive order, but the creation of the Department of Education was done by Congress. Therefore, Congress is the only one that can undo it. Well, Supreme Court technically could undo it, but there's no reason they wouldn't do that. So, but an executive order is not strong enough. So then the executive order itself actually comes out, and it's a very appropriate executive order. Like, it's not nearly the sweeping, just scrap it all that everybody was talking about yesterday. And President Trump, even as he was preparing to sign it, he acknowledged that there's a chance. I don't think he said chance. He said it's possible that we might have to go through Congress for this. And I would say that the chances of that being the case are pretty close to 100%, because they being the leftists, the Democrats, they are going to oppose this. They are going to file a suit. That suit is going to work its way through the courts, and I don't think it will be shot down, and I do not believe that the Supreme Court will even take it on. They'll just acknowledge, just be like, nothing for us to do. It's crystal clear in the Constitution that you couldn't do it like that. Now, but here's the thing. The reason that they might do it, and they might even allow it, is because it wasn't a sweeping decree. He keeps saying that we're going to get rid of the Department of Education, but the executive order itself, the verbiage, as well as in practice, it's going to be basically a whittling down. Now, that is legal. You don't need Congress for that. He can, start sending some of the powers of the Department of Education back to the states, while keeping some of the essential, they're not essential, but what they're claiming to be essential functions of the Department of Education, such as Pell Grants, as an example, keeping those under federal jurisdiction while transferring other powers back to the states. It is possible that he can get this through and for it to stick without having to go through Congress, because let's face it, they're not going to be able to get it through Congress. They won't. They can try. They might even be able to get a handful of Democrat votes. The only way that it could possibly work in that regard, our best hope, is that the executive order, as it's stated, is able to go through the courts. It will get shot down initially, for sure, but then in the appellate courts or all the way up to the Supreme Court, hopefully, it'll be able to stick. But if it doesn't, then they are going to have to go the legislative route, and that, I'm afraid, the only way that it could possibly work is if the Republicans are able to make just an incredible sales pitch to the American people, so that they start calling their representatives, and if we can flip just a handful, probably, considering some of the Republicans aren't going to be on board with it, like Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski, I'd say you need probably 10 or 11. Mitch McConnell's probably a no on it, so that would put it at, you would need 10 there, and if one other senator, Republican senator, flips, that means that you would need 11 Democrats to flip as well, flip to allowing the abolishment of some sort, or at least the dismantling of the Department of Education. So it's a great move, good feel good move, right? And things are going to happen. And to be clear, a lot will already go ahead and get dismantled. But I do believe that the courts are going to halt the full dismantling, and then we'll see where it goes from there. With that said, now you know what? Let's skip a break. We'll do a break after in a couple of segments. Let's just go straight into this first story. Start off with some funny stuff. JD Vance is a funny man. Vice President JD Vance said the funniest thing I've ever heard, intentionally spoken by a vice president, possibly in my lifetime. We've heard some pretty funny stuff from idiots and amongst past vice presidents, but this one, he was just off the cuff trying to be funny, and it worked. Watch.
How are you doing the job differently than Kamala did it?
Well, I don't have 4 shots of vodka before every meeting. That's one way I think that Kamala really tried to bring herself into the role is these word salads, and I think that I would need the help of a lot of alcohol to answer a question the way that Kamala Harris answered questions.
Damn! I mean, That's the only appropriate response to what JD just said about Kamala Harris. He went on to be more serious, and he did note, according to an article by Breitbart, he did note that that there wasn't a level of trust between Biden and Harris, and so she was just less empowered to do her job. He said, and luckily I'm in a situation where the president trusts me, where if he asks me to do something, he believes it's going to happen. And obviously we'll talk about it and check in. That's all in the service of accomplishing the president's vision. And I think I try to remind myself of that every single day, that the American people elected Donald J. Trump to do a job. For him to do that job successfully, the people around him, starting at the top with the vice president, have to do their job. It's a very refreshing take on his role as vice president. I've said in the past that the vice president is basically just a backup quarterback. They're there to hold the clipboard. They don't really do anything. We saw that with Pence. We saw that with Kamala Harris. We saw that with pretty much every vice president outside of Cheney. Dick Cheney pretty much ran the country when he was number two to George W. Bush. But outside of that, vice presidents have generally tended to be nothing. They're just placeholders, possible successors. In this case, I would say that JD Vance is very quickly establishing himself as the GOP nominee de facto in 2028. President Donald J. Trump called out Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts by name today, and I got to admit, I'm feeling at least a little bit potentially responsible for this, and praise God for that. Earlier this week, I did a segment regarding the judicial tyranny that we are experiencing here in the United States of America. Democrats, leftists, they're going out and they're shopping around for an activist judge who's willing to impose an injunction or a restraining order or whatever decision he or she can make to subvert, suppress, and possibly even stop the Trump agenda from being fulfilled. Now, granted, they are ignoring the will of the people, the vast majority of whom not only voted for President Trump, but also have demonstrated approval for everything that President Trump is trying to do. They might like some of it, they might like all of it, but very few people like none of it. Those that do are generally anti-American or just severe sufferers of Trump derangement syndrome. There's been a lot of calls, including by the president himself, to take certain actions. There have been conservatives and talking heads that have been saying, he just should ignore it. That's an option. Joe Biden, there is precedent for that. Joe Biden and Barack Obama both ignored judges during their time in the White House. They could engage in impeachment, and John Roberts actually called out President Trump for supporting the idea of impeaching these judges that are engaged in judicial activism. Well, I got a lot of heat for it, but I did post a segment of my show. Did very well on YouTube, extremely well on Rumble, and very well on Twitter as well as on my website to the article that I had posted about it. And I did notice at the time, the next day, there was quite a bit more traffic from Washington, D.C. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to take credit for it. This all falls on President Trump. But there I said there's really only two ways to truly stop this degree of judicial tyranny. The first way is practically impossible because it would require the legislature, Capitol Hill, to be able to limit the jurisdiction of federal judges. They would need to pass a law. And in order to do that, they would need at least 7 Democrats to get on board. And the chances of that are, nil. So then I went to option 2, which is for Chief Justice John Roberts to declare, he can very easily declare that either they stop what they're doing, they being the judges, or what's more likely that there would be an expedited scenario. Anytime a judge, a federal judge, a district judge, whatever, anytime they impose something on a president, and to be clear, I was saying to any president, any executive action in D.C. handled by a local, federal judge, court, district judge, whatever, any decision that they try to push off and to stop the executive branch, it gets immediately expedited directly to the Supreme Court. That John Roberts can do and almost certainly should do based upon what we're seeing. Keep in mind, President Trump has had more judges, more decisions against his executive orders. Just through February, we're not even talking about the first 3 weeks of March. Just through February, So less than a month and a half into his presidency, he had more decisions against his executive orders than either Barack Obama or Joe Biden in their entire terms. And let's not forget, we were stuck with Barack Obama for 8 years. President Trump was able to pass him with the activist judiciary in a matter of a month and about a week, a little over a week. So that's where we stand. Now let's go to what has happened today. According to a post on Truth Social, cross-posted over at X, the president said, unlawful nationwide injunctions by radical left judges could very well lead to the destruction of our country. And that's not hyperbole, by the way, to be clear. These people are lunatics who do not care even a little bit about the repercussions from their various, very dangerous and incorrect decisions and rulings. Lawyers endlessly search the United States for these judges and file lawsuits as quickly as they can find them. It is then the obligation of law-abiding agencies of government to have these quote-unquote orders overturned. The danger is unparalleled. These judges want to assume the powers of the presidency without having to attain 80 million votes. They want all of the advantages with none of the risks. Again, a president has to be allowed to act quickly and decisively about such matters as returning murderers, drug lords, rapists, and other type of criminals back to their homeland or to other locations that will allow our country to be safe. It is our goal to make America great again, and such a high aspiration can never be done if radical and highly partisan judges are allowed to stand in the way of justice. Stop nationwide injunctions now before it is too late. And here's the key point. If Justice Roberts and the United States Supreme Court do not fix this toxic and unprecedented situation immediately, our country is in very serious trouble. This is the first time that the president has called on the Supreme Court to act directly against the judiciary, at least during this term. And this is the path, folks. This is the only way. We're not going to get legislation passed that can bring these judges down, okay? Take them down to an appropriate notch. Maybe someday we can, but right now we can't. Then there's, of course, there's the whole, well, but we can impeach them. Folks, we need a supermajority in the Senate in order to actually remove them from office. So any impeachment, while it calls them out, it puts them, on notice. But again, unless I don't even know what a judge could do to properly get impeached. There's been like 14 of them in our history, and those are usually because of direct crimes, not because of any judgments that they have engaged in. And as John Roberts had noted, I don't completely disagree that impeachment isn't necessarily the way to go after judges who have not necessarily broken the law. I'm not agreeing with them. I wish that they could just be impeached. I would support that if it were possible. But the chances of getting, 13? We would need 14 Democrats to side with all of the Republican senators to get just one judge impeached. It's not going to happen. Okay? It just won't happen. Then, of course, there is the possibility, and I would say that this should be still left on the table, the possibility that the administration can get into a war with the judiciary, basically ignore any executive orders until they make it to the Supreme Court, and then abide by whatever the Supreme Court says. That's an option. It's not a very fun option. There's there's precedent for that happening, but not at the scale at which President Trump will have to do it. Because again, we're talking about more decisions, more rulings against his executive orders than either Barack Obama or Joe Biden during their entire terms. He's on pace to shatter everything. Even he had 65 of them in his first term in office. That was way more than anybody else, and he's on pace to absolutely obliterate that record if this activist judiciary is allowed to continue to impede the power of the President of the United States, the power of the executive branch. These are supposed to be co-equal branches. But this branch, this judicial branch, is engaging in judicial supremacy. Low level, there's dozens, hundreds of them that could stop a president. How is that even viably right? Now, to be clear, a lot of people have said, well, they should not be allowed to do that. Look, if a ruling is a ruling, Okay, you can't really hamper the judiciary all the way because we will need them at some point. We still may need to sue a Democrat president at some point, or states need to be able to sue. What I'm suggesting is, if you're going to make the stakes this high at a national level, then it should be a national judiciary, such as the Supreme Court, that makes the decision very quickly. You can't have federal judges stalling an administration or even stopping them from being able to engage in their constitutional duty, their responsibility as the executive branch. So I am 100% on board with President Trump and his call to have John Roberts do something because, quite frankly, that's the only viable option we've got at this point. The infrastructure here in the United States of America is, how should we put it, challenged. It's old. I mean, it was probably good decades ago, but now it is showing signs of age. And as a result, many Americans would be in a great deal of trouble if there was bad weather or natural disaster or some sort of, God forbid, some sort of attack that would take out the power grid for an extended period of time. Unfortunately, the vast majority of Americans do not have any real backup. I mean, we'd be sitting there waiting for FEMA or the electric company or somebody to turn the power back on. I am a huge fan of solar. The challenge with solar, of course, is that it can get very expensive, usually thousands, sometimes even tens of thousands of dollars to get a good solar generator and system. I have found a good one that is inexpensive, and I mean relatively inexpensive. It's still hundreds of dollars, but at least it's not thousands or tens of thousands. And it's the one that I use. In anytime there's challenges. It's also portable, so even when we go out, throw it in the trunk or the back of the SUV and go camping, go do whatever. It's always good to have a nice portable solar generator with you at the time. For me, I am a huge fan of the Grid Doctor. Go to jdrucker.com/solar. jdrucker.com/solar and check it out. I think we're on sale right now. Well, I don't want to say right now because it depends upon when you're watching this, but at least as of right this very second, there is a nice sale there. So go to jdrucker.com/solar and get you a Grid Doctor 300 today. Ten signs that a significant portion of our population has gone nuts. And by significant portion, unfortunately, we're talking about probably a lot larger than most people realize. It is an ugly scenario, an ugly situation that we're faced with because it's not just the leftists. I had somebody leave a comment on, I think it was on YouTube, if I recall, left a comment. No, you know what? They sent it to me directly, which you can always send me direct messages by going to jdrucker.com/talk. jdrucker.com/talk. That will come directly to me, and we can talk. Anyway, so I got that message, and they were basically saying you've got to really hammer it home that leftist equals globalist, and I don't disagree. Not anymore. There was a time when there was a distinction. There was a time when they were aligned. It's kind of like if you can picture a Venn diagram, two circles, and right there in the middle, a good chunk of it between the leftists and the globalists were aligned, but now it's just like one big circle. Everything the leftists here in America do aligns with what the globalists do. Everything the globalists do align with what the leftists do. They are one and the same. So I wholeheartedly agree, and I would give credit to the person that sent that to me, but I don't remember who it was. So apologize up front. I'll try to remember to give you credit tomorrow. So there's an article over at endoftheamericandream.com. Now, before I start here, let me just state up front. Michael Snyder at End of the American Dream, the Economic Collapse blog, all of his various websites, he has a tendency to engage in what some people refer to as fear-mongering. I don't disagree, but it's important fear-mongering, which is why I love to talk about his content. I love to post his content. I love to put it out there because it's so important. The dude is, his discernment is very good. Okay. His research is impeccable. I mean, the guy's just got, he's very good at finding the right information to match the topic that he's discussing. And he'll find 5, 10, 15 different references in his articles. Good stuff there. My only challenge, and I think the challenge with a lot of people, is that sometimes his conclusions are a little bit like, oh my gosh, the sky is, I mean, you can tell by the names of his sites. endoftheamericandream.com, the economiccollapseblog.com. I love him, okay? I really do. His show is great. I listen to it as much as I listen to anybody else's, okay? But just know that up front that sometimes these stories can be a little bit leaning in the direction of fear-mongering. Let's go to this one. Is from endoftheamericandream.com. Have you noticed that people around you are behaving more erratically? These days, you just never know what is going to set someone off. A person may seem relatively normal, but then the moment you express an opinion that they don't like, they totally lose it. It is almost as if the majority of the population is constantly on edge, emotionally. If you are one of those people, you need to understand that nobody is going to agree with you 100% of the time. If I write something that you don't agree with, that is okay. And if you say something to me that I don't agree with, that is okay too. A free exchange of ideas is so important in our society, but a lot of people don't seem to understand that. So let's just correct Mr. Snyder right off the bat. He says a majority. I don't think it is a majority. I think that we have an extraordinarily loud minority of unhinged people. And he says, he doesn't mention a side, left or right, but let's be clear here. 96, 98% of those people that are truly legitimately unhinged when it comes to politics, they are on the left. We can see this in perfect display. So how do people react? How do the different sides react when they don't like a company? You had, for example, Bud Light, right? Bud Light did something that the conservative right didn't like. So what did we do? We stopped drinking their beer. We stopped buying their beer. We made fun of them. We really did a number on their business. This was the number one beer in America at the time. And as far as I can recall, I don't keep up with Bud Light's sales, but I'm pretty sure they're no longer the number one selling beer in America. We boycotted them and we made fun of them. Now let's look at Tesla. Tesla, the owner or one of the founder, one of the major shareholders of Tesla, is now working with President Trump to bring efficiency, to end government waste, and to try to make America great again in a way that I would say the vast majority of Americans should agree with and probably would agree with if they were made aware of exactly what's going on instead of the legacy media narrative that's being fed to them. That's a discussion for another day. But what is the reaction to this company that they don't like? They're literally going to burn it down. They're going to burn down vehicles. They're going to burn down lines of vehicles at dealerships. They're going to see a Tesla, and at the very best case scenario, they're just going to flip it off and flip off the driver and maybe yell at it. Worst case scenario, they're going to vandalize it. We, on the conservative right, we don't like a company, we boycott them. They, on the radical left, they don't like a company, they try to physically destroy it. They engage in multiple, massive criminal efforts. You have individuals going out there keying vehicles, okay, destroying private property because they don't like Doge. So they're going to take a Tesla driver, many of whom are leftists, and they're going to hurt them. They're not hurting Elon Musk. Okay, Elon Musk, they already bought the Tesla. The Tesla, the money that they used to buy the Tesla is already invested somewhere else. They're only hurting their fellow American citizen. Again, oftentimes, Democrat Party members or members of the left or whatever, because these are electric vehicles, they're going to punish them. That is the difference here. So hopefully, and I haven't gotten beyond the first paragraph of Mr. Snyder's article, but at least up front, I want to make sure that we get that out of the way before we get much further along. Let's get further along. Can you remember when it seemed like most of the people living in the country were relatively normal? Yes. It's called the 90s. I realize, and 80s, 90s. I realize that this may be hard to believe, but there was a time when our streets were not filled with nuts and you didn't have to worry that the next person you run into might flip out for no reason at all. One of the big reasons why everything has gone so haywire is because we simply stopped developing deep relationships with those around us. Amen, brother, to that. I'm glad that he's getting into more of the core issue instead of just saying, like me, I'm saying, oh, it's the left versus the right. No. He's onto something here. Today, our relationships are with our screens. Yes. According to the American Psychological Association, U.S. teens spend an average of 4.8 hours a day using social media. That doesn't include texting or anything. That's, searching the net for, I don't know, nearest Tesla dealership or something. No, this is just social media. 4.8 hours a day. And he's referencing, this comes from the American Psychological Association. I don't have to read that. You already know the damage that can do. Study after study has shown that heavy use of social media can lead to depression and a whole host of other emotional issues. So it should come as no surprise that over 1/5 of all adolescents living in America, quote, and this is a quote from it doesn't say who, ACHI, whoever that is. We'll find out here in a second. According to ACHI, 1/5 of adolescents living in America had a current diagnosed mental or behavioral health condition in 2023. More than 1 in 5 adolescents in the U.S. had a current diagnosed mental or behavioral condition in 2023, according to a new data brief from the Health Resources and Services Administration. Among those 5.3 million adolescents, defined as children ages 12 to 17, anxiety was the most common condition. And that's at 16.1%, followed by depression, behavioral conduct problems. Female adolescents were more likely than male adolescents to be diagnosed with anxiety and were more likely to be diagnosed with depression. However, behavior and conduct problems were nearly twice as likely to occur among male adolescents compared to female adolescents. In other words, the young girls are getting depressed. They're having trouble coping. Young men are lashing out and engaging in crimes, sins, whatever. Back to the article. Wow, is what Snyder says. And how many more have undiagnosed conditions? Many social media communities are breeding grounds for hate. For example, an interactive map that shows the locations of every Tesla showroom, charging station, and the known residences of Department of Government Efficiency employees is going viral on social media. I don't even have to give you any analysis on how inherently wrong that is, on how disgusting that is. And then you, of course, have people like Jimmy Kimmel, who I talked about yesterday, out there encouraging this type of activity. Elon Musk hating hackers have doxed Tesla owners in the United States, releasing an interactive map showing their names, addresses, phone numbers, and emails. The disturbing website called DogeQuest also provides the location of every Tesla showroom, charging station, and the known residences of Department of Government Efficiency employees. It even lists FBI Director Kash Patel's home and uses a symbol of a Molotov cocktail as its cursor. He's out there trying to stop government efficiency. And you have the radical left, let's just call it, forget radical, just the left. The left in legacy media, amongst Democrat politicians, talking heads, influencers, they're supporting this because he's exposing their crimes. Not they as in like the 18-year-old out there keying a car, or it's funny, I say 18-year-old, it's really been a lot of 45, 50, 60-year-olds that have been out there seen keying Teslas. I mean, they're upset and they're calling him a Nazi. They're brainwashed. They're indoctrinated. They are useful idiots. So many of them are. Because if you were to try if you were to sit them down, put them in a chair in a locked room, give them some truth serum, and say, why do you think that he's a Nazi? And they'll say, because he's trying to stop this, or he's trying to do that, or usually they really will have no idea. They literally have no idea. That it's because they're being told this by the globalist elite cabal and the deep state's weaponization arm. These people are being activated around us. They are. They don't know why. They couldn't explain to you why they hate Elon Musk. They just know they do. They couldn't explain to you why they're supporting firebombing Teslas. They just know that they do. They don't know why they're calling him a Nazi. They don't know. Half of them have no idea what Doge even means, what it stands for, what it's doing. But somehow, this has become the most overtly aggressive action of protest since like the 1960s. Why? Because he's cutting out waste? Do all these people love waste? Do they want and need someone else, somebody in government, to take everything from them and then to tell them what they must do? The answer to that question is actually yes. It might not make sense to you, okay? If you're watching this show, chances are you're a free-thinking, independent, non-globalist, non-collectivist. You're probably a conservative, almost certainly a patriot. May or may not be a Republican, but you're almost certainly not a Democrat. And you don't understand why this is happening, why these people are so unhinged. And we often use, and I am to blame for this as well, I do it myself, we often use the word unhinged far too often. This is one of those cases where these people truly are unhinged. They are unhinged from reality. And we're not talking about, a small amount here. Snyder said it was a majority. I don't think it's a majority, but it's also not 1%. Okay, we saw this. If you watch that Jimmy Kimmel clip that I posted yesterday, if you watch the Tim Walz clip that I posted, if you watch, there's so many of them. I mean, it's up to I've seen at least 4 or 5 myself, where the audience is cheering on Tesla stocks dropping. The audience is cheering on Tesla vehicles being destroyed. If you have any leftist friends, ask them. And then ask them why. Okay? Ask them, are they in support of it? And then why? And they will say because he's a fascist. They'll say because he's a Nazi. They'll say because he's a billionaire. He's getting into my privacy. They'll give you all the talking points that they're being fed by the people around them, their fellow leftists, as well as legacy media, as well as Democrat politicians, as well as something. I don't know. I don't even know where it's coming from because we haven't seen anything like this. Folks, this is unprecedented. We've seen hatred against Donald Trump, but that was different. Okay? It's still a derangement syndrome, whether it's Doge derangement syndrome, Musk derangement syndrome, Trump derangement syndrome, whatever. But at least, with President Trump, there were certain things that could or should maybe turn off somebody who's politically opposed to him. Doge it's pretty darn close to being nonpartisan. I'm not saying bipartisan because Democrats want their stuff covered, as do, unfortunately, a good chunk of Republicans. I wouldn't say bipartisan, but this should be a nonpartisan issue. We've covered before how both Joe Biden and Barack Obama really wanted to focus on cutting waste. Okay, great. We're going to cut waste. Oh, no! This really is about what he's doing, Elon Musk, what Trump is doing, what the administration as a whole is doing. It's putting the cabal at risk. It's putting the power of the deep state at risk. They're not concerned about Tesla. They're trying to do anything they can. They're desperate. They're so terrified of their sins being exposed, of the multitude of sins that were committed through USAID on behalf of everybody other than the American people and the Constitution. They are just terrified that those sins will be exposed, that it will be proven and demonstrated that the entirety of government, not the entirety, 98% of government, whether it's in Congress, whether it's passed laws, whether it's departments and agencies, the bureaucratic state, the executive branch, past branches, past members of the branches, all of them participated, knowingly or not. Sometimes they were just useless idiots, or useful idiots, I should say. But they all participated in one way or another with the greatest crime ever committed against this planet. It really is worldwide. And never in our history, never in the history of anything, of anyone here, of anyone not here, anybody dead, never in the history of humanity has there been an opportunity like this to finally expose and dismantle in whole or in part this evil, because it really is just pure evil. The evil of whatever you want to call it. I call it the deep state in conjunction, deep state in the United States, working with other deep states around the globe, working with NGOs, working with the Soroses and the Klaus Schwabs and the now deceased Henry Kissingers, and that to me is the globalist elite cabal, and the deep state is responsible. They're like the globalist elite cabal's wing here in the United States of America. That's how I look at it, but that's probably an inaccurate depiction. But however you look at it, they're the ones that are behind all of this. They're the ones that have committed these crimes. They're the ones that established the Federal Reserve, that took us off the gold standard, that did all of these various things that basically made us slaves, first slaves to our own nation, and then sold us off to be slaves to a debt cycle that is owned by foreign nations. And don't even get me started about what they're doing in Africa, what they're doing in South America, what they're doing in the Middle East, what they're doing in East Asia. This is the number one reason why I have dedicated a good chunk of this show to trying to sniff out conspiracy theories. It's not because I like them. I hate them. I am, relatively new. We'll say 8-9 years into the conspiracy theory world. I used to make fun of David Icke and Alex Jones and all those guys. They were right in many cases. I was wrong, and I'm willing to admit it. Now I'm on what I believe to be the right side of those arguments. And that's why it's funny that when I had a huge audience, hundreds of thousands of people watching every episode, I was saying the wrong things. Now that I've got a smaller audience, I feel like I'm saying the right things. Which is why you should subscribe and like and all that good stuff. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll get back to the rest of this article. One of the best ways to stay ahead of the deep state and to understand the machinations of the globalist elite cabal is to get information from people in the know, such as former CIA analyst Jim Rickards. Go to jdrucker.com/crisis, jdrucker.com/crisis, and see what information they have for you today.
I'm Jonathan Rose, CEO of Genesis Gold Group. As Americans, we work hard every day to provide for our families and ensure their future. But with the uncertainty facing our economy, it is more important than ever to safeguard your wealth and protect your retirement savings. Educated investors look to safe haven assets to shield themselves from the economic storm. Tangible assets like gold and silver can provide stability, security, and most importantly, peace of mind. In 1997, the Taxpayer Relief Act allowed Americans to hold physical precious metals like gold and silver in their IRAs for the first time. Today, Genesis Gold Group helps our clients transfer existing IRAs, 401ks, and other retirement accounts into physical gold and silver, tax and penalty free. With thousands of satisfied clients, 5-star reviews, and fully accredited with the Better Business Bureau, our experienced team is here to help you navigate the process, start to finish. Now is the time to educate yourself on the importance of a diversified portfolio, including tangible assets like gold and silver. Call now to receive our free wealth protection kit and digital dollar defense guide. Call now and we'll include our extremely popular silver prepper bar free when you open your account. Add it to your IRA or have it sent to your home. Call Genesis Gold Group today at 800-200-GOLD. Prepper bar only available through Genesis Gold Group.
So during the break, I noticed I've only made it through 3 of the listed 10, and that took up an entire segment. So let's get back to it. Toot sweet. Let's see. Needless, and as you recall before the break, we were talking about the unhinged attacks on Elon Musk and Tesla Continuing in that vein, needless to say, the map has been put out there in order to get people to take action, and after they have been fed endless hours of hate-filled propaganda, many of our young people have been perfectly primed to do just that. And as I noted before, it's not just the young people. Let's not just say, oh, it's just those young, crazy kids. No, I've seen like 80-year-old men keying Teslas on video. As I'm sure you have too. Earlier this week, several vehicles were viciously set on fire at a Tesla service center in Las Vegas, as I'm sure you all know. What you feed into your mind on a regular basis is going to determine how you view the world, which is why you should watch the JD Rucker Show every day, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern. It really is that simple. Let me give you another example. At some hospitals in New Jersey, parents are asked to provide, quote, preferred pronouns and sexual orientation. This comes from the New York Post. For not themselves, not for their young children. This is for their newborn babies. Again, from the New York Post, as if coming up with a great baby name wasn't hard enough, newborns can't even control their own movements, but that isn't stopping New Jersey hospitals from asking parents for their baby's preferred pronouns and sexual orientation of a baby. Inspira Health's sexual orientation and gender identity questionnaire requires new parents to identify their babies as either male, female, transgender, genderqueer, or additional gender category. It further asks parents to select the word that best describes their infant: lesbian or gay, straight or heterosexual, self-described, questioning, or unsure. Again, we're talking about a newborn infant. Needless to say, infants have no idea what pronouns are, and it will be years before they understand anything about sexual orientation. Unfortunately, we live in a world where many feel a need to inject such cultural issues into everything because those that are on the cutting edge of cultural change are often held up as heroes. And I'm not even going to read this particular post. It's from Christian Post about Dylan Mulvaney. You already know about him. No, God does not make any mistakes, and God is not a pop star either. Just wait till you hear this one. This one, I mean, I don't get surprised, folks. As editor of the Liberty Daily and DiscernReport.com and AmericaFirstReport.com, I get to see some of the craziest things that are happening in our world. This one shocked me. I mean, not shocked like, oh my gosh, I'm aghast. No, it's more like shocked like what? We're at that stage of anti-American, anti-Christian, anti-faith, anti-God hatred in the United States of America? Yes, apparently we are. If you can believe it, Democrats in California recently began a meeting by reciting a prayer to Beyonce. Yes, the pop star, using Beyonce's lyrics. This, according to Libs of TikTok on X. California Democrats opened an assembly meeting by reciting a prayer to Beyonce using Beyonce's lyrics and asking her for strength. Democrats are making a mockery of God, and it is sickening. Are you kidding me? Michael Snyder asks. It is a very dangerous thing to mock God. Sadly, many of our top scientists are now trying to play God. One company in Texas has announced that it actually plans to bring back the woolly mammoth by 2028. So we're not even talking about, don't have to worry about it. It's going to be after 2030. No, we're about probably 2 or 3 years away. And once they get artificial general intelligence or artificial superintelligence on the case, I'm sure they'll be popping out woolly mammoths by 2026. But whatever. This comes to us according to Western Journal. A biotechnology company whose goal is to bring back the woolly mammoth says its recent small step is big news. Great name. Colossal Bioscience of Texas has said it aims to restore extinct species to the planet. No risks there. It's not like there's an entire movie series about that. The company made the woolly mammoth one of its first missions, setting a goal of having a mammoth walk the earth in 2028. And as Snyder says, haven't these people seen the Jurassic Park movies? Bringing extinct species back from the dead is never a good idea. Of course, it isn't a good idea to create superintelligent AI entities that can think for themselves either. We already covered this, but I'll cover it again. In Sweden, one company has successfully developed an AI dog. AI dog, this comes from MSM, that has a functional digital nervous system capable of learning and adapting like humans. According to this Legacy Media report, a Swedish AI startup company has created a robot dog named Luna. that has a functional digital nervous system capable of learning and adapting like humans and many animals, the company, into a cell. Said on Wednesday in one of the first use cases of physical agentic AI, which can make decisions and take actions towards specific goals rather than just perform narrow tasks or generate content, the robot dog would be able to learn like a real dog. See, my dogs never learn, so I'm not too scared of this one. Does anyone out there believe that it is a good idea to create ultra-powerful, ultra-intelligent entities that can think millions of times faster than us? Actually, yes, a lot of people do. A whole lot of people do. The Ray Kurzweil disciples definitely do. To me, that is one of the most insane things that we could do, but we are doing it anyway. Despite all of our advanced technology, it appears that humanity is more unhappy than ever. And there's a reason for that. We've heard about this. I've heard about it somewhere, I think it was in the Bible, where the Bible talks about the days of Noah. The Bible talks about, in multiple chapters, multiple books, it talks about the end times. And this is why I am a firm believer that we may be in the end times. I don't pick dates. I don't declare until we see prophecy completely fulfilled. You can only assume. Okay, you can only look around and say, yeah, this sort of feels like Book of Daniel. This sort of feels like Revelation. It will be definitive. We will know. If you are a Bible-believing Christian, you will know, which is why, I often go on here and say, look, now's the time if you need to build up your spiritual armor, make sure to read Ephesians, okay? If you need to build up your strength, your belief system in the Bible, in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, now is definitely the time to engage more in prayer, more in fasting, more in repenting. I often say those things. But there's one thing that I don't say nearly enough, and I need to start, and that is, it's time to read your Bible, okay? If you want to see what's going to happen tomorrow, read the book of Revelation. If you want to see what's coming down the pike, just look at all of the various prophecies that have yet to be fulfilled. Many of them have. Of course, with the return of Jesus Christ, with the birth and life and death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, we saw a whole bunch of prophecies fulfilled. But there are still many that have not been fulfilled and will be fulfilled in the days just leading up to, and then the eventual return of Jesus Christ. We are going to see these things happening. And so I strongly recommend to read your Bible. And if you don't have a Bible, get a Bible and start reading it. And a lot of people ask, where to start? Where should I start? I always say, start with the book of Matthew, then go back to Genesis and read it all the way through. That's my stance. But some, and I would argue many, have said that really book of Revelation is the best place to start because it gets people sort of, you know how it ends before it begins. And there is a sort of wisdom to that. And I would argue that especially now, since it feels like we are heading in that direction, heading towards the end times, we may already be in the middle of it, for all I know. Because of that, I would say there may be some wisdom to skipping to the end of the book and then going back and reading the entire thing from Genesis on. Back to the article. Americans fill approximately 6 billion prescriptions each year. 6 billion prescriptions. That breaks down to about 19 prescriptions per person. Just think about that. And a very large percentage of the pills that we take are for mental or emotional reasons. Earlier today, I was stunned to learn that use of ADHD medication is rising the fastest among middle-aged and older women. ADHD medication. Seems kind of odd. This comes to us according to NBC News. Prescriptions for ADHD medications have been spiking in recent years, with the sharpest increase among middle-aged and older women. They're also the least likely to misuse the prescription stimulants, a new study finds. Well, at least they're responsible with their... Anyway, the rise... Sorry, I'm not going to give medical advice today. We're not going to give medical advice today. I'm trying to avoid all those strikes on wherever. You don't need medical advice. You're my wonderful, brilliant audience, and you already know what I'm thinking. The rise among women ages 35 to 64 has been substantial. At the end of 2022, 1.7 million women in this age group were prescribed stimulants such as Adderall and Ritalin for ADHD, compared to 1.2 million prescriptions in 2019. That's a huge spike. Okay, that's 500,000 more in 3 years. I mean, that's what is that? That's 40%. 40% increase? That's insane. We take billions of pills, but has that made our population more stable or less stable? Needless to say, just look around. The answer is pretty obvious. We are in the midst of the worst mental health crisis that our nation has ever seen, and that is just one element of the perfect storm that is now upon us. I would also note that since we've already brought up the Bible once, let's bring it up again. I would argue that based upon our understanding of the Bible, that many, if not most, if not all, of the true mental illnesses out there are actually demonic in nature. I have nothing to back that up. Okay, that's a bold statement without evidence, and I could be wrong, but it certainly feels like I'm not, at least to me. I think that when people feel, they tend to hear voices or this, that, or the other, it's not just I don't want to say that it's not a physiological challenge. I'm saying that physiological challenge, that it manifests physiologically, but that it truly is demonic or satanic, or however you want to word it. There is a distinction between the two, and there's also a very good debate about which one is which. But anyway, that's not for today. You get the idea. Anyway, back to the article. Our society really is coming apart at the seams right in front of our eyes. Unfortunately, most of us do not want to admit how far we have fallen, and that is not good at all. It's not. I'm not going to preach. I've always said that I'm a big fan of expressing my faith, expressing my, shamelessly. Of course, I wouldn't be ashamed, but even without apology, not trying to impose anything on people that I wouldn't want to impose on them because they need it. Does it make sense? So I don't preach. I don't start reciting Bible verses to people. I don't say, turn your Bibles to this page. That's not that I think there's anything wrong with that. It's just not my thing. I prefer to look at the situations that are happening in the world, trying my very best not to attribute this to that or this to that unless I have concrete evidence. I don't want to start saying, because we've seen too many times for decades, really for centuries if you break it down. I mean, you can go down multiple times throughout history. The thought leaders, if you want to call them that, the influencers of the 15th century, a lot of them felt that they were in the end times. A lot of them thought, oh my gosh, they started matching things up to what the Bible was saying. They're like, see, that's it. That's it. I don't want to do that. But maybe I should. I mean, maybe we are truly starting to experience those challenges that we are going to face. A lot of people say, oh, don't worry, before things get crazy, we'll be gone. We'll be raptured. Now, I'm not going to get into pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, post-wrath, pre-wrath, anything like that. That's not a debate that I generally have, not on my show, not yet, at least. But there's nothing in the Bible that says that it's going to be a piece of cake and you got nothing to worry about, even if you are pre-trib. Okay, you might say, but we're not assigned to wrath. That's true, but that doesn't mean that we won't face crazy things leading up to the end times. The end times don't start with the rapture. So regardless of what your perspective is about, what happens during the end times, please take note that we are going to go through crazy times. And guess what? Look around. I mean, we're going through crazy times. Look at during World War II. They were going through some crazy times. Look at pretty much, you can go through and you can identify large groups of Christians who were persecuted, who were in pain, who thought that their world was ending, because for many of them it was, and it still wasn't the biblical end times, not the crunch time. I know a lot of people will argue, and I don't disagree, that the end times technically started the moment that Jesus was resurrected. It's just a 2,000-year end time, or a 3,000 year if you say, however long. But the events that are portrayed in multiple books of the Bible, the true end times events, those seem to be sort of crunched together into something that can be called technically the end times. And it sure feels like we're in it. Or at least, maybe, on the verge of being in it. So, repent. Find your peace with Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. And as I noted before, please If you haven't done it already multiple times, read your Bible. But guess what? If you have done it already multiple times, still read your Bible. Speaking of end times, this next video is one that was sent to me by a viewer. You can always send anything to me, by the way, by going to jdrucker.com/talk or on my open DMs at x.com/jdrucker. This was sent to me. It's a story that we actually covered a couple of weeks ago, but I only covered it briefly, and I think it's important to get this information out there because there really is something crazy happening in Texas that I apparently, it's funny. I'm just a quick aside. Bear with me. Sometimes I forget that not everybody reads through the news, all of it, every single day. So that's why when this video came out, I was kind of shocked that it was like retweeted and liked, reposted, whatever. And it's had like millions of views. I'm like, well, this is kind of old news. But then again, I realized maybe it's not because it didn't get a ton of national attention. There are plans to create essentially a Muslim city in the state of Texas, one that will abide by Sharia law, disregarding American laws altogether, allegedly. We'll see. I don't see how that's even possible, but then again, it is 2025 and crazier things continue to happen every single day. So pay attention. I agree with this lady about, I would say 98%. She's got it pretty locked down. So, so we will see what you think. And unfortunately, I don't know who this is. I don't have an ID on this particular person. We're just going to play her stuff and thank her for her contribution to the knowledge of Americans.
There is a development that very well may happen that I think everybody in America needs to watch. So there's a group of Muslims, Islamic people, who are looking to build a place called Epic City here north of Dallas. It sounds like a water park, but it is indeed not that. What they're trying to do is take 402 acres, and they plan to build an entire city of Muslims, but not to be governed by the United States and our laws, but to be governed by Sharia law. Now, in this city, in this proposed city, there will be over 1,000 homes, of course, a temple for them to worship, shopping, the same thing as any city. But we won't be allowed to, our laws won't apply to them. That's what they want. If any of you know anything about Sharia law, we should all be very, very outraged and very scared of what their plan is to do here in America. If y'all don't remember in the Middle East when the little girls with all the women were taking their, what are they called? Whatever. Their scarves off their hair and their face, and then they started their heads off, little girls included. Yeah, that was Sharia law, by the way. You look over there now and women can't even be outside. They can't work. They can't shop alone. They don't have money. Complete and total oppression and depression. Right now. Under what? Sharia law. And if you think for 1 second they're not going to try and impose those laws on Americans that live in that area or surround that area, you must be crazy. You must be crazy. They absolutely are. And the craziest part to me is that there are some local political figures who are supporting it. And I want to see what their bank account look like. That's what I want to see. I want to see who paid you to sell your own, to sell Texas out. Now, the history of this is it was already brought up and they wanted to get it approved, but it was shot down. And Greg Abbott said there will not be any such thing, any Muslim towns established in Texas. That's not happening. But they're bringing it back up again, and there's a few mayors that are supporting it. I also want to point out, if you're a believer in God and Jesus Christ, the rumor is The Antichrist will come up out of the Muslim faith. He will be Middle Eastern. Not saying for sure, but the man of perdition is supposed to be Middle Eastern, and really everything is fitting that. And one of the only religions that has that oppressive, extreme oppressive spirit is Islam. And the fact that they're trying to do that here is like, and this isn't the only place that they're doing it, that they're trying to build these towns and cities like this, where they actually they have their own police departments and things like that. I don't know. Whew. Things are coming quickly. I don't know what everybody else finna do, but I be worried about my people. I know that ain't gonna fly with us. That's not gonna, we not going. And so that makes me wonder, like, dang, what they gonna do with us? They ain't gonna do nothing with us. But y'all should be very worried. And the fact that people here are willing to sell out their own people, trust me, it's for some money. It's crazy to me.
So what the leaders, the planners of this epic city are doing, they are implying rather than asserting. In other words, they don't declare definitively that it will be ruled by Sharia law. They're only implying it. They are not declaring explicitly that only Muslims will be allowed there and that there will be no-go zones. They're simply implying it. But even Governor Greg Abbott, who I've never been a huge fan of, to be clear, but Governor Greg Abbott himself has come out and gone against this. This is an article from last month. Proposed Muslim, from Odyssey.com, KRLD News Radio. Proposed Muslim community in Josephine is not allowed in Texas, Abbott said. A new planned Muslim community known as Epic City is set to be developed in Josephine, about 40 miles northeast of Dallas. The project, led by the East Plano Islamic Center, will span over 400 acres and include a central mosque, housing, Islamic schools, clinics, stores, parks, and a nursing home. The development aims to create a self-sustaining community that caters to the needs of local Muslims. However, the project has sparked controversy, with critics arguing that it could function as an exclusionary enclave. And that is exactly what's being implied by everything. They're not hiding it. They're not pretending like, oh, no. It's going to have a mosque, but we're not saying that churches aren't allowed. No, they are saying that churches won't be allowed. They're not saying that it's going to be straight up Sharia law. They're just talking about the laws of Islam, which is Sharia law. According to Greg Abbott, this is again February 24th, 2025. To be clear, Sharia law is not allowed in Texas, nor are Sharia cities, nor are no-go zones, which this project seems to imply. Bottom line, the project as proposed in the video is not allowed in Texas. And I'm not going to play the video, but it does, again, imply. Everything's about implications here. And the funny part is that this community, what is it called? Community Center for, well, I don't know. Whatever it is, its initials, oddly enough, are CCP. Crazy. Greg Abbott weighed in on the matter, saying that Sharia cities have no place in Texas. He emphasized that Sharia law and cities are not allowed in the state, reinforcing existing legislation that prohibits the application of foreign legal codes in Texas courts. To be clear, we would be getting the same outrage. And when I say getting, we would actually be getting far more outrage if somebody were to declare, hey, we're going to build a Christian city. Really? You can't do that in the United States of America. Every leftist in the nation would be screaming about it. They'd be burning down more Teslas or something. I don't know. Abbott's comments have fueled the debate, with supporters of the project arguing that it is simply a housing community designed to meet the needs of its residents. Its residents that will all be Muslims. Meanwhile, opponents continue to express concerns about the potential implications of American legal and cultural norms. The development of Epic City is expected to proceed, but it remains to be seen how the controversy will impact its progress. And look, I don't know. I don't live in Texas, so I don't know what can be done. But clearly something needs to be done, whether it's by politicians or by the people. You need to vote. You need to figure out what ways you can operate to prevent this, because we are already having so many challenges. As a matter of fact, let me play this other video real quick. completely separate. Okay, now we're dealing with Satanism. Okay, which some would say is technically not separate, but this is a video regarding Satanism, and I wanted to I was going to save it for tomorrow, but let's go ahead and play it now because this really demonstrates the state of affairs here in the United States of America.
The state of Kansas gave permission for Satanists to perform a black mass at the state capitol, dedicating the state capitol to the devil himself. And then last week, a Catholic church in Kansas was ransacked by Satanists. Vandals broke into the church. They smashed statues, candles, windows. And you see this picture right here. They decapitated the head of St. Patrick. They also burned an American flag and spray painted on the inside of the church. And the graffiti actually referenced a website affiliated with a group of Satanists who are set to hold this upcoming black mass at the Capitol. So people are assuming that perhaps these are the same people. They're part of the same group. And then the Kansas Archbishop filed an emergency lawsuit to compel the Satanists to return a stolen consecrated Eucharistic host that they plan to desecrate during this black mass. Now, they did have permission to have this black mass that is coming up. It's next week. But there are new provisions passed by the Kansas legislatures that effectively would ban the whole ordeal. But the Satanic Grotto's president, Michael Stewart, has declared that the Satanists are going to go ahead with this event anyway. Take a listen.
Stewart says they're protesting oppression, those who have imposed their religion on them and have failed them.
I've never been to a black mass. For people who don't know, how could you describe this?
We are going to observe certain rules that preclude certain things from what we would do in private. Ours tend to be a little more body, a little more ruckus, smoke and mirrors and fun. We can't make any messes here. We can't do a lot of things. So what we're going to do is heavily lean into what I call the four blasphemies, kind of representing an alternate to the Stations of the Cross.
Stewart says religion has taken center stage in some debates at the State House, like abortion. Catholic groups have advocated for more restrictions on abortions in the state. But in 2022, Kansas voters decided to uphold abortion rights in the state's constitution.
If there are Catholics here fighting against abortion rights, which Kansas has decidingly and overwhelmingly voted for, then I will use those same mechanisms to speak back.
Then would you argue that religion has somehow infiltrated the State House, not just, national politics, and for that reason you're using it as a way to combat what you're seeing here through legislation?
I think that is a great way to summarize.
So really what all these Satanist groups are doing is they're leveraging their recognition as a religious organization to challenge the dominance of Christianity in public spaces and institutions. That's their purpose. That's what a lot of them even say explicitly is their purpose. Some of them are real Satanists. A lot of them, it's really a troll on Christianity. It's a way of asserting their rights under the same legal protections afforded to Christianity. So basically, it is this argument right here on TikTok.
Hey, so you're like a radical leftist. Could I ask you a question? Radical leftist. Okay, that's a new one. All right, fire away. What's up? On our money, it says, "In God we trust." And we sing songs like, "God bless the USA." Does that bother you at all? No? Why would that bother me? Wow. Maybe you're not so radical after all. Okay, a lot of the crazy left-wingers want to get rid of Christianity and everything like that. I'm sorry, I'm missing something. You said, "In God we trust," right? "In God bless the USA"? Yeah, Jesus. Oh, it doesn't say "In Jesus we trust." It doesn't say "Jesus bless America." It says "In God we trust and God bless America." Yeah, Jesus, the one true God. The one true God you believe in. See, this is America where we have freedom of religion. You could believe in a flying spaghetti monster, Cthulhu, or even the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters. It doesn't matter. That's the whole point. So when a Muslim looks at a $1 bill and it says "In God we trust," it's their God. It doesn't matter. It's interchangeable. No, that's not what it is. It's talking about Jesus. Oh, you're one of those crazy radical right wingers that believes that we should be a Christian nation. Ah, shoot. We're not actually. That's why we left England, so we could have freedom of religion.
Okay. A lot of problems with this take, and you're seeing it repeated over and over again by the Satanists, by the school system, by just general left wingers, even politicians. The phrase "In God we trust," adopted as the U.S. national motto in 1956, undeniably referred to the Christian God not some generic, non-specific deity. And the founders, while advocating for religious liberty, operated within a predominantly Christian framework. This is ahistorical to say otherwise. John Adams explicitly stated that the Constitution was made for a moral and religious people. The Declaration of Independence invokes nature's God and creator. And to suggest that God in this context equally encompasses all religions, including Satanism, is absurd and ignores the historical reality of the founders' intent, which was to secure freedom for religious practices within a broadly Christian moral framework, not to elevate all beliefs to identical standing. And the idea of government neutrality weighting a fringe group like Satanists, whose tenet mocks or inverts Christianity or Christian values, equally with Christianity, so Satan is on the same level, and Christianity, which has shaped the nation's legal and ethical foundations, that would have been absurd to people like Thomas Jefferson or Madison, who saw religious liberty as protecting individual conscience, not mandating a relativistic equivalency of all faiths. That is an insane thing to assert.
You know, Evita Duffy is quickly becoming one of the true rising stars in conservative media, and I'm very happy about that because she does openly mix in her faith with her conservatism. I know there's far too many people out there, far too many conservative and alternative media folks who they're like, I'm a conservative commentator, I don't really talk about my faith on air. You know, it's like, I just, for me, I don't understand it. I don't see how you can talk about anything cultural or political or anything really without talking about your faith. You know, and I know a lot of people get turned off by it. That's why, by the way, that's why it's uncommon, because I get comments all the time, you know, you'd be better off if you never brought up Jesus or God. It's okay to believe in that. I believe in that too. They always say, I believe in it too, but I don't have, you know, I don't want to intermingle it. Then look, no offense to those who, well, I guess offense, go ahead and get offended if this applies to you. But if you think that there should be a separation between what you do, what you say, your work, your anything, if you think that there's anything in your life where you need to separate yourself from your faith from that particular thing, then whatever it is wrong. Okay? I mean, the truly faithful will allow their faith to guide everything. That's part of what we as a nation were raised to believe way back when. I know that it's not acceptable. You know, the attacks on the faith have been going obviously since the Garden of Eden. But here in the United States, they've really been hardcore since the 60s. We can look at the 60s and the 70s as a true turning point in America towards our downfall as a nation. That's not to say that we can't recover. And I've seen revival happening in ways that I wouldn't have expected, ways that I at one point thought were impossible now in the United States of America. It is starting to happen again. Is it too late? I don't know. Is it enough? No, not yet. But does that mean that it never will be? No, I think that there's a good chance that it will be. But we are going to need more people speaking out, speaking openly, speaking fearlessly about their faith and about our faith as a nation. People like Evita Duffy, people like the young lady before, talking about Epic City. We need more of this, much more of this. There was a time in my lifetime when such things were acceptable, when even legacy media would pray on air sometimes. I remember seeing this as a child. I remember hearing people, I mean, even people, this is going to shock you, but I mean, I remember hearing people giving speeches at like award ceremonies. We're talking about like Hollywood people or music people that were unafraid to praise God. Tom Hanks thanked God during one of his Oscar speeches. Tom Hanks, yes, that guy. Things have changed. And I'm not saying that being, you know, openly acknowledging or admitting that's something that automatically means that you're a good Bible-believing Christian. Again, Tom Hanks. What I am saying is this, that if you are a Bible-believing Christian, you shouldn't be concerned about expressing your faith in whatever you do. And if you are engaged in something that for whatever reason prevents you from being able to express your faith, maybe it's time to find something else to do. Here's a true story. I was testing out some coffee. This has been almost a year ago. Testing out some coffee for a potential sponsor. And I had made the coffee, and I went about my morning routine, did my work, doing my thing, and then I took my first sip of coffee. And it struck me. I'm like, holy crap. I had forgotten that I had was testing out this new coffee. I just took the first sip, and I was like, wow, this is really good. And then I remembered, oh my gosh, this is Promised Grounds. This is the stuff that they sent me. So I started drinking some more of it, and I have become a lifetime customer of Promised Grounds. They are a Christian coffee company, which I know you don't see a whole lot of them. They give back to the community. They're Texas, all American, all Texan, just like a lot of the stuff that we do. Check them out. Go to jdrucker.com/coffee, jdrucker.com/coffee, and check out Promised Grounds. It's great. I know I don't say it nearly as much as I should, but please, if you are watching and if you appreciate what we do here, please be sure to subscribe, be sure to thumbs up or like or whatever, and make sure to share this with friends. We need to get the viewership up as quickly as possible for the sake of the Rumble algorithm, the Twitter algorithm, the Getter algorithm, YouTube, all the various places where we publish this show. People ask me sometimes, why do you publish on YouTube? And I always tell them, and it really is because of search. You know, we want the message to reach as many people as possible. And Google, for whatever reasons are obvious actually, but Google is still the top search engine, and YouTube just performs so much better there. So we do put our shows and our clips, a lot of the stuff, on YouTube with the understanding that that's the best way to be able to reach new audiences. Not the best way. The best way is if you subscribe, like, and share. But the second best way is through search. And for whatever reason, Google is still, as evil of a company as they are still the top dogs big time when it comes to search. So being able to be found in Google, be able to be found on YouTube. There's a whole lot of people that watch YouTube exclusively, conservatives, Christians, even though many of them know that there are challenges with that. They don't like the Rumble app. They're not going to BitChute. They don't like Facebook or Twitter. I don't know. They still find themselves on YouTube, and it's understandable because it is hands down by far the biggest repository of the kinds of videos that a lot of people want to see. Facebook is the only near competitor. You know, we love Rumble, but let's face it, Rumble size-wise, as far as just the sheer amount of content, it's like 1/1,000,000th of the size. You know, it's very. It's big. All you Rumble people out there, I'm one of you. So don't hate on me because I said that. But that's just a statement of fact. You can find a lot more videos on YouTube than you can on Rumble currently. We'll see what happens in the future, but as of right now, that is still the case. So subscribe, like, all of that wonderful, amazing stuff. Lord willing, I will be back very soon with another episode. But in the meantime, y'all stay strong, stay safe, and God bless.